Well, as I told you yesterday, I always love just to listen and watch you sing and worship. The only thing that's missing is the dancing. There are so many times that I've been to Africa, particularly here in Zimbabwe, the men and the women will start dancing, and around. I love to watch that. So y'all do that next time. Let me see some dancing. Do you not dance? Yes? Well, then I want to see it. Next time. All right. Now, we have been talking about this amazing this amazing doctrine of God. And we talked earlier about these different philosophies in the world today and how they illustrate to us the fact that our philosophy of God is the only philosophy, the only religion, the only faith that offers to the world a God who is actively involved with His creation. A God who wants a relationship with those who follow Him. And so, while our God is the sovereign God, the one and only true God, who is altogether different from His creation, He is also involved in His creation. He is near. His presence is felt. Now, those two terms are the transcendence of God, that fact that He is altogether different, and the immanence of God, the fact that He is with us. He is involved. Now, I want us now to look at the attributes of God. Now, these concepts of immanence and transcendence, of God being far above His creation and yet near His creation, all of these, or both of these, can be seen in the attributes of God. So let's look at item number 5. Now, when we say the attributes of God, what do we mean? What is an attribute? Well, an attribute is an essential quality or a property or a characteristic of something or someone. The essential quality, one of the essential qualities of me is what? My white skin. One of the essential qualities of you is what? Your dark skin. This makes me, because I am white, because I speak English, because I was born in America, because I was raised and educated in America, this makes me what? American. Because you are dark and you were born in Africa, in Zimbabwe. You were educated here, you live here, this is your home, you speak the language, this makes you what? Zimbabwean, you are African. Those are essential qualities, those are attributes that make you who you are. And attributes are so necessary that without them you could not be what you are. So an attribute is absolutely necessary for you to be who you are. The attributes that you have are what make you what you are. For example, if a man were stripped of the attributes belonging to him, he would cease to be a man. Because these attributes are what make him the male of the species. The attributes of God are those qualities that constitute what he is. They are the permanent, inseparable characteristics of his nature. Now, the attributes of God do not define him. Why? Because God cannot be fully defined. If God can be fully defined, then he's not God. So the attributes do not define him, but they do describe him. They can be used to help us easier or more easily understand him. The attributes of God are the basis of how God has revealed himself to us. This is how he has revealed himself. Now again, these do not make up everything there is about God. There is much that we do not even know about who God is. But these are the ways that he has chosen to reveal himself to us, and so that we can recognize him as who he is, the one and only true God. Now, do we understand that? Theologians have numbered and categorized the attributes of God in several ways down through the centuries. But for you and me, we will use 14 characteristics of God. 14 attributes that make him God. There will be 9 that describe God's great glory, and then 5 that describe God's great goodness. His glory being his transcendence, and his goodness being his eminence. So let's look at the attributes of God's great glory. These describe God's transcendence. Now, pay attention. These attributes that we're about to look at are attributes that you and I have no idea about. We cannot relate to any of these because we cannot experience these. None of these attributes can be applied to us as human beings. These are what describe the otherness of God. They describe why, or tell us why he is so high above his creation. They are what make him the one and only true God. So what are they? Let's look at them. Number 1 is sovereignty. Now I've placed this at the head of the list for a purpose, because I believe this is the supreme characteristic of who God is. He is sovereign, the one and only absolute ruler of the universe. He does as he pleases in every instant. He is in complete control of all things that happen in the universe, regardless of whether they can be explained and or understood. And there you have verses there that speak of the sovereignty of God. We've already talked about sovereignty, so we won't stay there very long. But you and I don't understand what it's like being sovereign. I don't know about you, but there's never been a day in my life when I could do what I please. I cannot do whatever I want to do, or whatever pleases me. Because there are rules, there are laws and things that I must abide by. So we don't know what it means to be absolutely sovereign and in control of all there is. But God, that is what makes God God. You do not want to you don't want a God who's not sovereign. Because at some point, if he's not sovereign, there will be something that he cannot control. God is sovereign. That's what makes him God. Number two, God is self-existent. Psalm 90 and verse 2. Before the mountains were born, or you gave birth to the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Have you ever had one of your children ask you, if God made all there is, well then who made God? Where did God come from? That's a common question for children to ask. And the answer is, God came into existence. God has always been in existence. He is self-existent. He has no beginning. He has no end. He exists by virtue of himself. Now, that's something that you can't you can't take your mind and wrap it around that. We cannot understand that. And that's because we are all dependent on something else for our existence. There was a point in time when you and I came into existence, and there will be a point in time when you and I depart this world. But that's not true of God. God is not dependent upon anything or anyone for existence, but he has eternally existed without any external or prior cause. The theological term for this is aseity, A-S-E-I-T-Y. It's right there in your notes. This is a good term for you to be familiar with. I wouldn't recommend using it in a sermon with your people, but it is a good term for you to learn. Aseity, literally, meaning from one's self. That is the theological term for being self-existent. It describes that which derives its existence from itself, needing no other source. Everything else in creation depends upon God for existence, but God depends upon nothing but himself. This is how he could give his name as I am that I am. He is self-existent. This is our God. This is our God. He is self-existent. This is what makes him God. Number 3 is eternity. In Exodus 3 and verse 14, God revealed himself to Moses as the great I am. Not the great I was or I will be, but the great I am. One writer has said, in God there is no was or will be, but a continuous and unbroken is. In him, history and prophecy are one and the same. Think about that. All that is past and all that is future is the same with him. God does not live in the past. He does not live in the future. He lives in the eternal is. God is. Well, when you get to heaven, that's the way it's going to be. It's not going to be, well, what did we do? Or what are we going to do? What are we doing? What? This is something that we can't. This is something that we cannot identify with. Look at me. Look at me. This is something we can't identify with. The eternity of God means that He has no beginning or end. He is related. He is related to events in time, yet He is not confined to time. Past, present, and future are one and the same to Him. Eternity is not just time extended forever, but rather it is existence that is superior to time. All of God's attributes are rooted in eternality. Since eternity doesn't wear out or run out, neither do His attributes. Because He is eternal, and because mankind was created in His image, eternality is given to mankind as well. You and I have the characteristic of being eternal. Our soul is eternal. But we do not experience eternity until that time when we die and we come into the presence of God. So you and I are eternal, but we do not experience eternity in our lives. So think about this. Everything, when God is it, you can think about it in these terms. God is in heaven, and He sees everything from an eternal perspective. That means if I am God and I am in heaven and the floor is earth and there's time in earth but there's no time in heaven. So let's imagine that this is the past, this is the present, and this is the future. Well, God sees the past in the same way He sees the future and in the same way He sees the present. So in eternity, past, present, and future are all the same thing. It's the same thing. When you, listen, you know there's a judgment coming. You know that there is, there are things that are going to take place in heaven. When you get to heaven, if you die today, when you get to heaven, everything that is going to be will already be. Because you're in heaven. Because you will not be in a place where time is relevant. Now we speak about 1,000 years in heaven. The first 10,000 years I'm in heaven, I'm going to be at the feet of Jesus, just worshiping Him. Well, there's no such thing as a year in heaven. Because a year is a specific time, 365 days. There's no such thing as a day in heaven. Because a day is 24 hours. There's no such thing as an hour in heaven. Because an hour is 60 minutes. There's no such thing as a minute in heaven. Because a minute is 60 seconds. Time is irrelevant in heaven. Heaven is superior to time. And so when you step into eternity, all that was and all that is and all that shall be will have already been. I mean, you will be there. It will be the same for you. Now, you should be going, I don't understand. That's right. You cannot comprehend that. That's why this is a characteristic of God's transcendence. You can't relate to that. Because everything we relate to in this life has to do with some aspect of time. You are eternal, but you have not yet experienced eternity. But God is eternal. He always has been, He is, and He always will be. That's what makes Him God. This is our God. This is our God. He is eternal. The next is infinity. God is infinite. The attribute of infinity, divine infinity, means that the limitations of a finite creation do not apply to Him. Whatever God is, whether it's love or faithfulness or righteous or wise, He's all those things and more. He is without limit. And whatever He is cannot be measured. Psalm 147 and verse 5 tells us that. God is not bound or restricted by space, time, or matter. There is no point or edge or line that confines Him, and no size or weight can catalog Him. He is infinite. There is nothing that can measure Him. So when you think of how big God is, well then He's infinitely bigger than that. In other words, there is no size that can contain Him. He is infinite. This is our God. Men and women, this is our God. Where is there another God like our God? There is no other God. This is our God. He is infinite. The next one is immutability. God is immutable. What does that mean? God does not change. He does not change. His character, His nature, His purpose, it does not change. God is active and progressive. He is free to choose. He experiences joy and sorrow, but His nature and purpose never change. Now, remember, God interacts with us in this world, and He uses the things of this world, nature, and all the things that you and I experience as normal. He uses those things to interact with His creation and to communicate Himself to them and reveal Himself to them. So God is what? He is with us, He is among us, and using these things. So there may be times when it appears to us that God changes His mind or changes His emotion. He goes like it says, He experiences joy and experiences sadness and all. Remember this. These are ways that we describe God so that we can understand Him. So that we can have a concept of Him. The right concept. But this does not mean that God changes like a human being changes. It does not mean that He changes whether His mood or His emotion or whatever. It just